追新聞 YouTube 會籍開咗啦，歡迎加入會員撐起追新聞，多謝大家支持。
辛苦就冇點都冇阿爸咁辛苦嘅，咁我覺得就佢放佢出嚟呢個 effort 咧，當然上下啦，有時好似好 optimistic， 有時候又好似好悲觀咁啦。但係其實講真嗰句，我對我阿爸做嘅嘢我係好 proud 嘅。我覺得而家個 situation 係佢即係話佢係即係係嗰個黑手啊，好多呢啲 conspiracy theory 咧。而家個 prosecution 已經 make 咗佢哋個 case 㗎啦，睇到係其實呢啲全部都係假嘅。佢support 民主係因為啱嘅嘢嚟嘅。佢留喺香港，因為想保護佢嗰啲同事，想保護另外一啲香港人。即係佢覺得佢個 profile 好高，咁你捉咗我，有可能唔使捉另外啲人咁啦，係咪？即係好嚴格嚟講，我阿爸做嘅嘢係好 heroic 嘅，係英雄。咁我覺得而家香港arrest 咗佢，全世界都見到㗎啦，係嘛？其實而家香港經濟唔係好好喎，即係冇咩人係想喺香港繼續喺度投資啊做嘢啊，咁好多人而家離開緊啦，係嘛？而家香港有1900個political prisoner， 其實對香港嗰個 reputation 係好差嘅，全世界都見到嘅。咁佢哋即係要諗下，佢哋係咪想呢1900個 prisoner 開始喺監獄好似我阿爸咁即係我阿爸而家係77歲啦，咁好有可能會即係佢個身體都唔係好好啊，會有可能過世咁，即係佢哋要會死啦，係咪？即係佢哋要諗下係咪真係想行呢條？呢啲未諗嘅，我繼續努力咯，係咯，出翻嚟嗰時先講。My father's political awakening actually came during the Tiananmen Square, after the Tiananmen Square massacre. In fact, you know, in the line of these 2 weeks being so jam-packed, I was in Berlin just on Friday to commemorate the 35th anniversary of the Berlin Wall, and they decided to have a special link to Tiananmen Square on this specific event because it had motivated them to tear down the Berlin Wall. I still remember as a kid, I used to go with my family, and like many people in Hong Kong, we sit at Victoria Park on let's say the 4th of June, and we'd sit there in the dark with candles, and we'd sing this song called 自由花, the Flower of Freedom, and it was incredibly moving. And look, I'm not going to sing it out for you, but the chorus goes somewhere along the lines of there's a dream that we must never forget, that we must never let die. And there's a dream that we must never forget, that we must never let die. And no matter how hard the rain beats down, the flower of freedom will one day bloom. I didn't know what the flower of freedom was as a child, or indeed when it would bloom. But for my father and his colleagues, that flower of freedom, the contribution to that flower of freedom blooming, was through the newspaper, through finding the truth. Because he believed that with information came choice, and with choice came freedom. And obviously that wasn't an easy road, criticizing the Hong Kong government for the last 30 years and speaking truth to power. You know, our house was firebombed. There were assassination attempts because we obviously criticized mobsters as well. I remember one occasion when they skinned a dog and pinned it on our door. It wasn't an easy road, but my father and his colleagues I would say was proud of every single moment, every single step that they walked along that road, because as he says it, there's nothing more exhilarating than being able to give freedom to people. And then the NSL, National Security Law, came down. In Hong Kong nowadays, the Tiananmen Square vigil is no longer allowed. So this idea of remembering, as part of that song, they are trying to erase this memory. Free press is no longer allowed. To this day, they claim that they still have the free press, but they sent 200 people to raid my father's newspaper, arrested his colleagues, and my father is still in prison now after almost 4 years. His trial actually restarts on the 20th of November. And my father, in this second crossroad of his life, everybody told him to leave. Everybody told him that he was a better campaigner abroad, that he was 72, 73, and he should leave. He should enjoy whatever life he has left, the remaining few years. But my father knew that he was a journalist, but more importantly, he was also a publisher. And in your role as a publisher, you have a responsibility to the people that work with you, to the people that stand beside you day to day. And so my father decided to stay and act as a lightning rod, because he knew that by defending his stuff, he would be able to take a lot of the government's ire and give a lot of his stuff the freedom that they deserve, the freedom to not be persecuted. So I guess I just wanted to finish with this. Now that I'm 30 this year, no longer a kid, and I have seen this flower of freedom bloom, and I've realized that freedom is not a state of being; it's a commitment, and courage to tell the truth and to do the right thing is how we make the flower of freedom bloom.
We now have a situation where the Labour government, while in opposition, supported that call for his immediate and unconditional release, and that remains their position now. We welcome that. And we welcome, of course, the fact that last month at Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister said that the case is a priority and called for his immediate release. First time a Prime Minister has said this in 4 years, 4 Prime Ministers. Throughout the Boris Johnson and the Rishi Sunak years, we never heard a Prime Minister say that, nor did we hear it during the Liz Truss days. So we do at least now have that. So the principle is the right one. We now have a situation where the call is for his immediate and unconditional release. Key practical question is, how do we actually achieve that? What is the plan? Because simply having the rhetoric of calling for release is not enough. The key thing now is, how do you turn that principle into practice? What's the plan?
Obviously, going in proposition for us, for those 3 years, it wasn't until David Cameron was Foreign Secretary that we would hear the words, Jimmy Lai, British citizen. That whole time that he was in prison, when we and others were trying to get the UK government to engage, because I have felt from the beginning that the role of the British government is crucial in this. They, after all, have the formal responsibility for implementation of the joint declaration, and the many commitments that the Chinese government made, in which it has now broken, and that fact in and of itself has both moral and practical consequences for the UK and the rest of us who are the subject of pleas from the Chinese to accept them as responsible international partners. So to fast forward, we now have a different kind of formal, symbolic situation that has some important, I think, facets in terms of looking at the future and where things go from here. So we now have new governments in Washington and London. The leaders of those governments have both in the past I've lost track of time, past week or so, have said that Jimmy Lai's case is important to them, to the governments. Donald Trump said he would secure Jimmy's release. The Prime Minister said Jimmy's case was a primary concern of his government. And those statements in and of themselves don't mean that there will be any practical consequences of them. There could be, there might not be, I don't know. But they have raised the discussion to a different level. There's no longer any doubt, and there should never have been any doubt, but there's no longer any doubt that a British citizen, Jimmy Lai, is being persecuted in unimaginable ways, and I'll come back to that in a minute, in Hong Kong by the Chinese government. It's not the Hong Kong authorities, it's the Chinese government's responsibility. Those governments, along with new leaders or shifted leaders in the European Union, as well as some others in Germany also, France, are engaged in a reflection about how they're going to restructure their own policy and relationships with China.